Aloha Airlines Flight 243 was cruising at 24,000 feet when the roof of the cabin ripped off. Sometimes, it's the smallest details that lead to the biggest disasters. Aloha Airlines Flight 243 was cruising at 24,000 feet when the roof of the cabin ripped off. The plane was old. It had flown the equivalent of 90,000 pressurization cycles in salt air. Metal fatigue had eaten cracks into the fuselage skin. Passengers heard a loud bang. The overhead panels vanished. Oxygen masks dropped. One flight attendant was swept out of the aircraft. The pilots couldn't hear each other over the wind roar. They descended to 10,000 feet and made an emergency landing on Maui with no roof. Incredibly, only one person died. Everyone else walked off the plane. The NTSB called it a miracle. The disaster changed how airlines inspect old aircraft. But planes keep flying longer than they were designed to. 3 Mile Island was the worst nuclear accident in US history. It started with a stuck pressure relief valve. In 1979, a water pump failed at the Pennsylvania nuclear plant. Backup systems kicked in, but a relief valve stuck open, draining coolant from the reactor. The control room had no direct indicator for the valve position. Operators saw high water levels and thought everything was fine. They actually shut off the emergency coolant. The reactor core partially melted. Radioactive gas escaped. 100,000 people evacuated. The governor considered evacuating the entire state. The cleanup took 14 years and cost $100 billion. No one died directly, but public trust in nuclear power was destroyed for a generation. Engineers had known about the valve design flaw for years. Nobody fixed it because the fix cost money. NASA lost a $337 million Mars orbiter because one team used metric and the other used imperial. The Mars Climate Orbiter launched in 1998. Its job was to study Martian weather and climate. It traveled 416 million miles to get there. The navigation team at Lockheed Martin calculated thrust in pound-seconds. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory expected Newton-seconds. Nobody caught the mismatch. As the orbiter approached Mars, its trajectory was off by 60 miles. It entered the atmosphere too low. The 327 million spacecraft burned up or skipped off into space. NASA's post-mortem was brutal. The error was in the software interface. A simple unit conversion would have saved the mission. It was a typo-level mistake. Space agencies now have rigorous unit checking protocols. But the same kind of interface mismatch still happens in software every day. The Silver Bridge collapsed in 1967, killing 46 people. The cause was a tiny crack in one I-bar. The bridge connected Point Pleasant, West Virginia to Ohio. It was a I-bar, chain suspension bridge, a design already known to be risky. For years, traffic had been increasing. The bridge was rated for lighter loads than it was actually carrying. Inspectors checked it visually. They missed the internal corrosion. On December 15, 1967, rush hour traffic filled the bridge. The crack in I-bar 330 propagated. The chain snapped. The bridge fell into the river in under a minute. 31 vehicles went into the water. 46 people died. Rescue divers worked in zero visibility. Some bodies were never recovered. Every bridge inspection program in America was rewritten after Silver Bridge. But thousands of bridges still operate beyond their design life. In 2009, an F-20 Raptor crashed because maintenance crews installed a wrong bolt during routine service. The F-22 was the most expensive fighter ever built, $150 million per plane, invisible to radar, capable of Mach 2. During routine maintenance at Edwards Air Force Base, technicians serviced a bolt in the flight control system. They used a bolt that was slightly the wrong specification. The bolt failed during a test flight. The pilot lost control of the aircraft. He ejected, but the plane was too low. He didn't survive. The Air Force grounded the entire F-22 fleet for 4 months. The investigation found the wrong bolt had been installed by a contractor following an outdated manual. The most advanced technology in the world is still only as good as the least attentive person who touches it. In 1978, a student noticed a math error in the Citicorp Center's design. The building was already finished and occupied. The Citicorp Center was a 59-story tower in Manhattan. Its most distinctive feature was the base. The building stood on stilts, with the corners hanging over the street. The structural engineer, William Lemessurier, had designed welded joints for the wind braces. The contractor changed them to bolted joints to save money. Nobody told Lemessurier. A Princeton student named Diane Hartley wrote her thesis on the building. She calculated that quartering winds hitting the corner, would create forces the bolted joints couldn't handle. Lemessurier reviewed her numbers. She was right. A 70 mph wind from the wrong angle could tear the building apart. Hurricane season was approaching. A secret retrofit team worked through the night for weeks. They welded steel plates over every bolted joint. The building was fixed. The public never knew until 20 years later. NASA lost a 327 million Mars orbiter because one team used metric and the other used imperial. The Mars Climate Orbiter launched in 1998. Its job was to study Martian weather and climate. It traveled 16 million miles to get there. The navigation team at Lockheed Martin calculated thrust in pound-seconds. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory expected Newton-seconds. Nobody caught the mismatch. As the orbiter approached Mars, its trajectory was off by 60 miles. It entered the atmosphere too low. The 327 million spacecraft burned up or skipped off into space. NASA's post-mortem was brutal. The error was in the software interface. A simple unit conversion would have saved the mission. It was a typo-level mistake. Space agencies now have rigorous unit checking protocols. But the same kind of interface mismatch still happens in software every day. These stories remind us that even the smallest oversight can have significant consequences. If this belongs in the ledger, like the video, leave a comment and subscribe. A new entry is added every day.